Good morning, everyone. Bonjour. I just have a question for you. No high-tech devices required. How many here know and use the term Tier 1 country? It's hard to tell what that's. And how many of you, so it's not quite half, quite a few do not. How many of you, if you were at an event of some kind, a reception, networking, whatever, and you're chatting with someone who's not from the industry, and they ask you, gee, I've been hearing a little bit about Tier 1 and what does that mean? How many feel comfortable in clearly, concisely articulating exactly what that means? Okay, could you please come up and do this presentation then? One of the main points, I think, for me is, this is something, and admittedly still relatively new to the industry, but this has emerged in my vocabulary in the last few months. And I have found it, frankly, difficult, as have many around me, to really come to ground on what that means. But I do think that it's a piece, and probably a very significant piece, of answering the question that's in front of us today in terms of this question, will people still invest in Canada? So I'm going to just share a little bit of information because, again, the definitive definition, in my opinion, does not exist. But for those who may not be as familiar with this particular concept, I'm not going to read through this because really it's presenting a few facts on the slide, but underlines for me the basic lack of clarity on what that means. Just because there's perhaps lack of clarity on a singular definition doesn't mean that it is critically important to us, every one of us sitting in this room and beyond, as Canadians, as user of the healthcare system, and as people working in this industry. The attributes, though, we've sort of pulled together some of the attributes we feel are important for a Tier 1 country, and you'll see them up here. Important to know that, I think we all know this, that in the last 30 years or so, we have really developed a very robust country that is considered Tier 1 across the globe. We have worked together as industry, with governments, with the health systems across the country, with our research-intensive universities, all to grow this life sciences industry. So we've really put a lot of effort and gained what is, again, maybe not clearly defined, but that Tier 1 country status. We're only the 10th largest economy in the world. I should say start with the 38th most populous country in the world. We are the 10th largest economy, and we're typically a top 10 pharmaceutical market. So I take the point that Tony just mentioned, 2% of the market. When I first heard that coming into the industry, I thought, wow, we're really a pygmy player. We're not much. But when you translate that into how many other countries are trying to play in the market, even the percentage of the market that we contribute, we are not insignificant. We are top 10. It's something that we want to not only hold on to, but to grow, I believe, over the years. So some of the characteristics you'll see up here: the clinical trials, a world leader in terms of clinical trials. Important, of course, because that speaks to standard of care and all the other issues that go along with it that drive our positioning within the sector. Our IP and data protections are competitive, and with the recent provisions that we've seen in CETA and the yet-to-be ratified USMCA, you see how easily that flows off the tongue when you practice it 100 times. But with the new NAFTA agreement, there'll be more IP protection. So it's among the best in the world. We're really looked as a leader. In terms of regulation, and I will come back to that with another side of the story, but again, over the last 30 years, we worked closely with government. We've improved our performance along those years in terms of marketing authorization, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole program going on right now. You've probably heard of R2D2, which is the regulatory reform on drugs and devices, trying to make this an even better environment. Talk about pricing. The PMPRB has been an exemplar, really, in the world, leading the way in terms of how government and industry can work and create a level playing field that works for not only Canadians, but the health system and industry as well. And again, I'll come back to that, I think. The market, we have a diverse population, we have excellent healthcare system, universally accessible, and most recently, I'll say, you notice at the end there, the political commitment to growth. If you've been following from ISED in particular, Industry Science Economic Development. Have you had a chance to read their HBEST report, the Health and Biosciences Economic Strategy document? If not, please read it. It will warm the cockles of your heart and have you inspired about the future of this particular country. The benefits that we have received from having all those pieces, all those attributes of a Tier 1 country have produced these sorts of advantages in this country. We're a world leader, as I mentioned earlier, in clinical trials. Well, what does that mean? It means that we get medicines faster. It means that clinicians can use the new medicines faster. That contributes to that world-class standard of care, superb research and innovation platform. And then this is a little bit dicey because there are differing views of it, but I believe, having seen all the data, that our economic footprint is massive, and it's as a result sort of a chicken and egg to some extent, but because of being a Tier 1 country and contributing to us being a Tier 1 country, that we create over 30,000 jobs. We contribute almost $20 billion in GVA, and 10% of our revenues are invested in R&D. I don't have the time here to go into that in detail, but if anyone wonders about the discrepancy between numbers cited by government versus our numbers, and our numbers are conservative, it is about definition. It's about the difference between a 30-year-old definition and what the industry does now. That all being said, with all that good news about where we are currently as a Tier 1 country, there are what I'd call clouds on the horizon, and that is about regulatory reform. So unlike Brian Hilberdink, one of the earlier speakers who said he would not let PMPRB come off his lips, I will. I can't avoid that, unfortunately. And I'm not going to go into all the changes. You know them, or you should at this point in time. But how would I put it? Clear and present danger. And this is not to be threatening, this is not to just make dire predictions. This is a real situation that we're all facing at the moment. I'd also add that it's beyond the PMPRB regulatory reform. There is a sleeping giant that has been awoken. As a Canadian, I'm happy for that governments are waking up to the fact that they should have been doing more in terms of making sure that there's a vibrant health system and a vibrant sector, the one that we're working in, but the Pan-Canadian Pharmaceutical Alliance is very active. CAPCA in the cancer world is taking additional steps. I mentioned already the R2-D2. We're not sure how that will impact, how much positive, how much not so positive. So it's a little bit tricky of an environment at the moment. So I'm usually a pretty glass half full kind of gal, Pollyanna-ish, etc. But as I say, there are these dangers that we're looking at. Again, I'm not going to walk through the slide, you can read it, but getting back to the Tier 1 piece, that if the environment is so uncertain in Canada, if access to clinical trials, if access to medicine start dropping, if the standard of care starts dropping, then this will change our status. We will not have companies launching their drugs in this country. We will not have them seeking us out for our clinical trials. Patients will not have access to the life-saving and life-transforming medicines that they use. So we all need to be very versant in this. The glass half full side, and this is where I land in answer to the question of this session, I absolutely believe that if we do choose to work together, we can figure out a way forward, a way that acknowledges the need of governments to have better controls in place, a way that supports an incredibly important industry within Canada, and most importantly, a way forward that allows patients to get access to those life-transforming and life-saving medicines that they need. We can't do it as we're currently going right now, and that is the challenge. We're not operating in even a tension-filled collegial way. It is a siloed approach across governments in Canada that we are getting, I guess, inklings of support and good news that people in government, that certain departments want to work with this industry, other areas not so much. And until we can cross those divides and work with a government as a whole, we're not going to make that future that we want. I want to end, and I meant to bring this up. Tony, could you just pass me this? Thank you. The best articulation of the way forward that I've seen in a long time, beyond whatever I could say, and I have no seconds left right now. If you have not read yet the article by André Picard yesterday in the Globe and Mail, look it up online right away, read it. A lot of nodding of the heads, but a lot of people not knowing what I'm talking about. The title is simply "Hating Big Pharma Won't Get Us Better Drug Prices." And he puts the responsibility squarely on the shoulders of all of us to find the common ground and figure out what it is we need to do to look after all the respective parties in this particular conundrum. So if we get it right, they will come, the investors will come. Thank you very much.